All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us at the BUEA board meeting. Did everyone get a packet? I guess it was attached to your, and there are attached minutes for the October 14th meeting.
Sorry.
Has everybody had an opportunity to read the minutes, or can you read through them real quick? On the back of one page. Are there any changes to the minutes?
Julie, if I may,
Yes.
we do a roll
Oh,
call.
you do want to do a roll
Yeah, we
call?
should probably do.
Okay, well, I'm sorry, go ahead. then.
Paul Ash,
I thought since we were here, we didn't have to. do it. Julie Donham.
Lauren Station, Mary Morgan, Holly Warren, South Louisiana.
Chaz Moniger, staff liaison.
Kate Rosenbarger. No.
and Alex Bell.
All right, so if everyone has had
You
a,
need to do the online people too that are on there.
oh,
Oh,
yeah,
if you can hear us online, if you can go around, Dee, maybe start with you.
Dee Della Rosa, Executive Director for BUA Board, ESD, Assistant Director.
Yeah, I
and
hear
so on
you.
and so forth. Can you not hear me?
Split up. Your circles lit up.
Raise volume. On the computers, it muted, like,
This is not muted. Sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Dee, can you
Hello?
say something?
Hello? Hello?
I can hear you.
Okay,
Anyone else can.
okay, so it's in there. All right, hi Cheryl.
I,
You wanted to introduce yourself?
Dee Della Rosa, can you guys hear me now? Great.
Cheryl?
Assistant Director, Small Biz Development, ESD, and Executive Director, BOE Board.
Cheryl Gilliland, Director of Auditing and Financial Systems within the Controller's Office.
Great. Thank you both.
all right. So now are we ready for the
Yeah, we're
minutes?
ready to
Okay. So everybody had an opportunity to look through the minutes, and are there any changes? If there's no changes, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes for October 14th.
Move to approve.
Second? Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, minutes are approved.
So we can jump into the reports from the officers and committees and directors report. This is one of those cases where the best laid plans are, so Dee has been working in the background to get up to speed. He's ready to run this meeting today and came down sick this morning.
Sorry.
Stuck with me for another meeting. She has done a lot of the work, especially going into the budgeting that you'll see later on in the agenda. Dee, feel free to jump in here. Just a couple of things that from the director's report perspective, we are working on setting cycles inside of the grant software that we have in our department for administering a whole bunch of grants, including the Bloomington Arts Commission. We do sustainability grants. We're folding in some grant activity and setting that up for 2023 for the BUEA. And then we are going to talk a little bit about our work on resident scholarships. So much like if you remember last time, we did an analysis of business scholarships and found that we were sort of over budget relative to what we set aside for business scholarships. We've actually found the same thing today for resident scholarships, and we'd like to talk to the board about exceeding that by 2,500. Just to cover the remainder of the year for resident scholarships. We'll talk about that. There will be a preliminary budget in the new business portion of the meeting, so you'll take a look at that. Just a reminder to everybody that the idea is to kind of put it out there, talk about it, and then be able to use the next month to tighten it up based on the conversation today, come back with you to you with a more formalized budget at that point. So this is much more draft fluid.
Okay.
Nothing's set in stone. And then a final small note is that, or two notes. One is the money market account went dormant. We reached out to Karin about it. So I went over to First Financial and undormatized it or whatever you do. Thanks. I brought it back to life. There is a question as to whether or not we want to keep that account. So I'm just going to work with the controller's office to see what the interest yields are and all that stuff. So anyway, it's back. So if you all want to go spend the $27, go nuts. And then finally, the Monroe County School Corporation Foundation, if you remember, we approved their funding last time. I think Dee has been in touch with them. We're trying to get a feel for what their plan might be. We had put out to them the idea that possibly if they had more need, that we would be willing to evaluate that. So we have some contact going on in the background of that.
Okay.
I think, Dee, have I forgotten anything? Is that?
No, that's about it. As far as MCCSC, I did contact Dr. Winston. I'm waiting back to hear from her. So I would like to, when I get that information, I'd like to make it as an addendum later for the meeting notes for today, so everybody can get a hold of those and see that. So.
Okay. Any questions on the director's report before we move to financial reports? All right. Moving to financial reports, and I asked for the varsity to be here today with Cheryl. So Cheryl, if you can hear us, okay. I will try to get through this, but certainly would welcome Cheryl's help. There, just one thing to note as we go through this is we are aware of and working on this professional service problem that we've seen previously. Cheryl knows that we're having weird QuickBook access issues, so that will be cleared. But starting on the balance sheet, what you'll see are total assets of $3.064 approximately $1 million, split up $2.8 million under the world of checking and savings that we have in that $27 formerly dormant money market accounts that I was talking about earlier. Then we have those accounts with German American, IU Credit Union, People's Bank. We also have the other assets in the notes receivables of the long term, and we're working on that. We actually are going to come back to you with a bit of we're doing an analysis right now in terms of where exactly people stand. The repayment process is challenging for some people, and it's not challenging for other people. And so what we're trying to be is as flexible as possible to accommodate people's current financial issues, with the idea that the most important thing is not to go into default, right? We don't want to be the ones who have closed a business down or anything like that. Having said that, we understand there's also sort of rules that we're trying to work within in terms of time. So we're working on that. We'll come back to that. This is the list of those. And then Cheryl, if you can just kind of quickly describe the equity lines down at the bottom, because that's where I'm a little bit out of my depth.
Well, really, the numbers come from a variety of places, and I will be honest that I do not have a complete understanding of where all of the numbers pull from. So it's basically it's a pooled amount of money that you have basically available. That it's very hard to explain. But when you pull all of the accounts together, you're looking at all of your accounts, your German National, your credit union, your First Financial, and it's just it's a way that QuickBooks is pulling, and it's set up, it's programmed, and I wasn't involved in that, so I don't know exactly where that's at, but I can learn, I can, reach out to Jeff Underwood and get a better understanding of, to explain that to you, perhaps in
Okay.
a meeting, if that's.
Yeah, that's fine. And I should have, I'm sorry, I put her on the spot a little bit. So the QuickBooks has been configured by another party. We're trying to kind of make sure
Yes.
that's how it works. So we'll come back to you on that.
Yes, I do not update these numbers precisely each month. They're automatically generated based on all the cumulative of all the accounts. So I can dive deeper and can get back with you on that.
So Alex, one thing I was talking to Dee about when we kind of had a phone conversation was setup of these notes receivable. We don't have a good program for that.
From a servicing
collection.
perspective, yeah.
A collection. So I thought, and I told Dee this, I thought Jane was working on like a third-party program that we were going to kind of attach our coattails onto and work with.
Yeah, so let me tell you what we've been doing. So yes, she had begun work with a CDFI actually to help that had the capability to do loan servicing. They unraveled on her.
Okay.
When she left. So we then reached out to a local company, an accounting firm in town, received bids back or I guess a bid back to do the work. It was higher than we wanted that to be.
All right.
So Dee is working with them to see if there's flexibility on that. We have a sort of fundamental problem that, so there are these two types of loans. There's the BUEA going out, and then there's the food and beverage tax, which
Right.
was close to $2 million.
But that's not on our books.
That's not on our books,
Right.
but that's part of the overall. So
Right.
part of the problem is that there are actually two sets of accounting rules that are applying from the perspective of the city. The food and beverage has a stricter and more limiting set of rules than the BUEA does. And so what we're trying to do is find that happy medium between the two. There's things, for example, like the ability to receive electronic payments from a borrower into the food and beverage flow is much more restricted than it is into the BUEA. So what we're trying to do is figure out, okay, do we want to administer these differently? In other words, use all the flexibility we can and should use on the BUEA while then just accepting the fact that the other one's going to be clunky? Or can we find a way to sort of administer all of them all together, even though we understand there's sort of two loan flows going on and that the same rules and the same capabilities would apply? And we're working with the controller's office to try to figure out what exactly the rules are. It's a little slow.
It seems like no more loans than there are. We ought to be able to do them together in some way. I mean,
Yeah, it should be.
Yeah.
It'd be
because-
simpler that way. certainly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
So it's a little frustrating. It's a little challenging because it's frustrating for the borrowers too. They would like to be able to not have to write a physical check and send it to
Right.
us. But in the case of the food and beverage tax, we need that, and then we need to be able to deposit it the same day. I mean, there are these kind of
Right.
which then put into question whether a third party can execute on something like that for the food and beverage. Can they execute on it in the timeframes that are required by the food and beverage limitations? So that's we've gone back and forth.
Okay. I think Dee had given me some price and I said, we don't even get that much income on it. Why would we
Yeah.
pay that? I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
There should be a setup fee. We understand that. But
Right.
the administration of it should not be as
Right.
How much
expensive.
was it?
What was it? How much, Dee, how much was that you told me?
So they wanted to do initially, I'm so sorry. Initially the setup would be $2,500 and then the servicing per month would be $2,500. So that ends up being about 30 grand for the year to service the loans. Now I need some clarification on that from the third party because I'm not sure if it depends on how many loans we're actually getting serviced, if that may change the actual fee. But yeah, I mean, that's $30,000 a year is pretty steep.
So one of the things that, so it is steep and so, we've been managing it internally. One of the things by doing that, one of the things that we're finding is that early on, it's kind of lighter work, right? Because people, I mean, we do have to kind of communicate with people, let them know what's going on. I think as time goes on, part of the concern is that, people become delinquent. If you start to have this sort of
Right.
collection thing that happens, you can understand the cost might go up related to that. But we shouldn't be seeing that kind of cost. And so we push back and we'll try to work with them to see if we can come up with a better
Or
price
maybe
structure.
get some more bids or something.
Yeah, I mean, I would ask some other firms.
We
in
are
town.
doing that as well.
Oh, you have, okay, because sometimes those prices can change
Yeah.
pretty dramatically.
So,
Especially if they know they have some competition.
well, they've been responsive. They've been, good to work with. It's just, it's a price tag issue.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably gonna be at least $1,000 a month on the low end, so
Yeah.
$12,000 a year.
Yeah.
If we're willing to spend that, I don't know, we might not be willing to spend that on 15 months, so.
Okay.
Or if we could split it, food and beverage.
Yeah, they probably can't do that, though, I bet the city.
Yeah, we almost have to, I mean,
the
it's like a
city-
church and
You
state
guys
thing.
can't
It's-
hire an outside firm to
It's
do yours,
it's just complicated.
the
yeah.
price to stay in house,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, welcome to city accounting.
Yeah.
The profit and loss is the next page. So you'll just see basically some interest coming from the zone loans, and then you've got some activity happening in grants and other interests. So it's a pretty light month. And then the page one of the January is the comparison that we started doing several months ago, and I pointed out earlier the Ivy Tech SBDC line split, which would be the same line which Cheryl's working on, and you'll just see, how we're doing against budget. Just as a way to ground ourselves then for the next discussion, which is really needed this meeting, which is the budget for 2023. All right, any questions about that?
Do we have a motion to approve the financials? Okay, second,
Second.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Financials.
So as part of that, do we want to talk before we jump into 2023 about this request for the resident scholarship? And
Yeah, let's do that.
So Chaz, would you just give us a quick overview on where that is?
Hello again, everyone. So as we are, with Steve being here, we're trying to get all these paid out. And it turns out the resident economic enhancement scholarship, potentially, we could go over, so the budget, a gallon rent is $10,500. The request right now, so it seems would be about 12,851. So these are all people that are in the DUs, who are taking classes, various reasons that meet the guidelines. So they meet the guidelines, they're in the DUA. So that would be about almost 3,000 or like $2,500 over. So we are wondering if you'd be willing again to go a little over budget for that. It could not be that high because again, these are a little complicated how we have it set up. We need to see how much your class actually costs. So it could be only $750 rather than $1,500. That's what we're getting. But in order to even get that far with them, we need to know if we have the budget to be extended. Otherwise, it's just like a waste of time.
Right.
So it would be a potential of going over to $12,851.13 for the resident. So we're just wondering if we have funds to be able to tell them you've been accepted, you'll get the receipts for your.
And this will be paid out between now and the end of the year.
Yeah, so we're trying to just finish it up. And we had, so these people do qualify, there would be nothing that, except we would do it in order to. And it felt because it took forever, with Jane being gone, that we sort of them to try to make this work, willing to go over it. And like I said, it might not go over because it could be, that will stay within budget with all their classes. They don't, reach the limit, so.
Right.
again, we just don't even want to tell them they're accepted if they are opting for the full amount because we can't. Person, we have to cut it off, so anyway, just wondering if you'd be willing to do that again. And Dee and I were talking about if that's even possible, and we looked at like the historic facade grant, I don't think we're gonna get to 40K this year by the end of the year with that. So there would be, you know, like 1,800 K that will be left, so you're thinking maybe that could be,
Yeah, so
you know, thrown over to this.
underrun the
Under
budget
the
on
budget.
other lines are gonna go
Yeah,
out.
so if you're willing now, but we just want to know what to do.
So is the request for $2,500 or 3,000?
To give more room, 3,000 would be nice, but
We can work with 25.
but yeah, 25 would be fine, so, because again, I don't think we will even give away that much, I think we were just thinking 25.
Are applications still open?
We close them now because we're.
Okay.
So some of these, yeah, kind of snuck in. And as we're going through it again, we realized that we were wrong last time, that we were potentially going to go over budget. We haven't reached out to these folks. Again, we're just trying to wrap it up by the end of the year.
So there wasn't a deadline for applications to come in.
How it, so Dee and I were working on that kind of Dee's court and Lisa. So, and Alex, we're having a grant offer because how it's done now, it's just way too much work on our end. And it's like, there's not like a set deadline to like, or that things get lost. So we're trying to actually work on a better system next year so this doesn't happen. So we can stay within budget and people know when the deadline is, we can get a lot of these things up front. So we're trying to really work on this next year to say like, we won't have these problems and we won't ever have to really come back and ask for this because it'll be more set in stone and automated on our grant system that we're gonna have. So.
If we have people that qualify, I don't have any issue with it.
And we didn't have clarification or a deadline. And now that it's closed, there won't be any more applications. So I think it's clarified for next year and everybody.
Well,
qualified.
and we should say two things. One is we do say that scholarships are available as long as funds are available, right? So there is a natural barrier we can impose and it's not a free for all. So we do have that. It doesn't feel like people are opposed to this, but there is that limitation. So we are not necessarily exposed on these unless we want to be. And then, yeah, as Chad was saying, it's just a rolling process. So to the extent that we can systematize that, but I think here it would be easier to.
I'm looking at the budget just to see where we are on budget, but we're wildly under budget on most of our expenses, so I'd say $3,000 to just be done.
Yeah.
That would be great. And again, we may not even do that, but just the possibility would be great. So we can't tell the people that they are. Really doing all this criteria.
Right.
Yeah.
Is there any more discussion on this? If not, I'll entertain a
Well, do
motion.
we have to decide where to take the money from, or do we just?
I think we'll just do it.
Okay, all right,
We're close enough to the end of the year.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
think so.
We'll
Okay.
just be over budget on that line item,
okay.
and then it all comes down, yeah,
Okay.
that's just one fund.
Yeah.
One big pot
Okay.
allocated on budget lines, it's a
Right.
great question, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll motion $3,000 increase in the resident scholarship expenditures for the 2022 year.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Great. Thanks, Chaz.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much. We appreciate that.
So actually, your question is a good question, just to make sure everybody understands, because I think, Kate, you're coming from it from the perspective of the city side of accounting, where you sort of have loaded money into a line, like it sits inside a line, and if you want to move it, you actually have to physically move it out and all of that stuff. But for everybody's benefit, particularly, newer members of the UEA, this is a spreadsheet, the budget's a spreadsheet, right? And so it is allocated, we try to track against it, money we're all sitting in a single account. So there's no inter-account movement that's necessary.
And on the balance sheet, when it says unrestricted net assets of just a little over $1 million, it's really all unrestricted. And we just decide to spend it.
Right.
Okay.
All right, so I will, Dee, if you're not hallucinating, I will turn it over to you. So maybe introduce the budget, the process that you went into both. So there's income and expense, obviously, they're very different processes for both. Maybe Dee, if you can take us through that, through your process, and then we can go into the details and then have an open discussion about it.
Okay, great. Thank you, Alex. Yeah, I am a little bit under the weather. So if I start rambling or I don't make sense, please just stop me and I will clarify. So essentially what I've done is look at Jane's old budget for 2022, taken what we essentially will be making by the end of this year, kind of averaging it out and coming out with some numbers. Julie and I had a really good discussion about a few things, specifically the EZID income. There's a drastic difference there when you look at that. That is line 8. Oh, I'm sorry, you guys aren't looking at my spreadsheet. You're probably just looking at a piece of paper right now. But with the Catalent and Cook DBA that being approved within the middle of the year, that increase was drastic. So that's why you see a big change in that specific line and an increase in income that is over $200,000. So many things were just an average, or I just kind of stuck to near what we were using before and moved it over. So at this juncture, right now, it looks like if we go down to the bottom two lines as far as income and expenditure, we are going to be nearly $250,000 at net income. And I guess the questions that I kind of have for the board and everything is, are we going to try and do a zero-based budget? And if so, do we think that's the best course of action? $230,000 is a lot of money, which is great. But that's a lot of programs and a lot of grants that we have to figure out. Now, we do have several ideas that have kind of just been, I think that the department's probably been playing with a few things in general. And now that we have this sort of influx of money, we kind of have the potential to do it. A few things that was actually brought up at the last meeting.
Can I interrupt for 1 second?
Oh, for sure, for sure.
Sorry, just to clarify, because we've been kind of very deep into this. So just to sort of summarize what you were saying there, that if you a typical year's budget would, if you sort of brought our expense budget forward year over year, it would be more or less in line with the income. But there's been such a significant change on the income side from the Catalent, the new Catalent, which we've been working closely with the county on, because Catalent has a variety of different incentives going on. We want to make sure there's no double counting. So we've done a sort of scrub of that. So we've got a pretty good understanding of the incoming DUEA. There's always the unknown.
Right.
So someone could, potentially have future revenues hitting us. But for now, this is the known quantity. And so it's leaving, when Dee's talking about that 230,000, it's leaving a kind of net income that was unexpected or not typical of previous years. And so anyway, I just want to make sure for everybody going through this first time you understood the dynamics of how those two lines work separate from each other. Sorry, Dee, go ahead.
Oh, no, thank you. Thank you for clarifying. So getting back to what some of the ideas that we have for some of this money and what we can do with it. I did speak to Julie a little bit about this. One was safety, security, business improvement, and ADA grants for businesses. Lisa and I have been working on some of that, where safety and security would speak to some things that we were kind of touching in the last meeting about vandalism, houselessness, things like that, and helping businesses maybe cover some of these expenses that they weren't expecting to incur. Business improvement, which would be just like general business improvement, just helping out maybe like new business or older businesses, do basic repairs and things like that. ADA grants, which would help businesses make their buildings more accessible, which I really excited about that one. I think Lisa's pretty excited about that potential grant as well. And another thing that I was thinking about that I don't think I've really spoken to anyone about in the department is a technology modernization program and or grant. I think that there might be businesses in the BUE, in the enterprise zone that could use help just modernizing what they have with the impending fiber that will be running through the entire city. I think that would be really helpful to help some of these businesses just modernize some systems, get classes on how to use some things, because we do have some older business owners that may not really be familiar or comfortable with technology. So those are just some ideas that we've kind of been throwing around and I've been thinking about for as far as like programs and stuff for maybe this overage. So if there are any other ideas, I would love to hear them.
Now, Dee, under unbudgeted grants, under business and entrepreneurship, there's a line item for 20,000. That was what you were gonna propose for safety, security, and ADA grants?
Yes.
And my understanding is that the team would be working on some guidelines that would be approved by this board for those types of grants.
Yes.
So she's got one of them in there. I mean, we were trying to kind of feel like, what do you think? What are you, tell me a little bit about your vision for technology modernization. I mean, I know you just said classes and upgrading equipment type stuff, but what do you see dollar amount in that?
Well, I think honestly, I just thought of this like yesterday.
Okay.
I was poring over this budget again. So there does have to be quite a bit of research done on it. I think that classes are probably, the best way of like starting out this program. I would like to see this be a program that kind of carries over for several years, because obviously we know technology doesn't really stop. It's constantly changing. So maybe initially we, help fund classes or find a group who does classes who can do that, sort of like the DEI training, but with technology instead. So as far as classes, it would be that, and then possibly grants for actual equipment and kind of just modernizing and upgrading equipment for different businesses and helping them out with that expense, because it can get quite expensive depending upon how old your equipment is, or if you have any equipment at all. But just kind of like starting there. Those are just kind of my first thoughts on it.
Dee, I just wanted to clarify, you've been mentioning businesses, but I assume it would be any organization within the
Yes.
BDA.
I think that any organization could probably use that modernization for sure. I also thought that maybe a technology like education grant for just residents in the zone. There are older residents in the zone that do need help with some of this new technology. I mean, my parents included, who could very much benefit from things like that. So I think that, with this awesome new opportunity that we have in the town with this advancement of all of this fiber, just preparing the residents for the opportunities that are there for this. So I think that a technology program might be what could really help us spend some of this money and help the residents.
So I feel like there's probably a macro question before we get into some of these micro ideas. The macro question is, okay, so we sort of unexpectedly are been flush for a little while.
Mhm.
How aggressively do we want to react to that in year one? Do we want to try to get to a, net zero budget, or do we want to maybe get part of the way there with the assumption that this is going to continue over a number of years without just going straight to that place, which could be a little reckless.
Right.
From so that's one macro question I think we should talk about. And then the other one is really about how do you you specify now as part of the budget, or do we want, like what we've done at the city in the past is we're just not sure how something's gonna work. And so we, in the case of, let's say it's a technology modernization, we go to market with a grant in the early part of the year and we kind of see like, what does it yield, right? And we've kept stuff in reserve so that if it is successful and if it is a need that's in fact validated by a grant cycle, then we have something in reserve to be able to then double down on that and maybe the second part of the year. So there are ways of kind of managing a little bit the risk and the uncertainty of not really knowing if that's a need in the marketplace. Conceptually, we understand it. So,
Right.
I mean, I kind of feel like we should be maybe thinking about those big questions, and then we can kind of drive down and figure out how should that be reflected in the 2023 budget.
I'm in agreement with you. I can't see just spending money to be spending money. We need something out there. And one of the things I was talking to Dee about is obviously the programs or the backs of these things are gonna have to have some guidelines and stuff like that before. So I am okay with leaving either, some net income, not spending it all this year and just maybe putting in some unbudgeted grants for these two items and let us take a look at them.
And go to market and do a little test run on that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, I wanted to ask big picture with the EBIT income. It is such a large amount next year. What happens in 24?
It's for 10 years. We'll have that for. 10
So
years.
just, for everybody's
For
benefit,
10 years, we'll have 500,000.
Well, some stuff will roll off, but we're gonna have, we got a $200 and some $1,000 bump and we're gonna have that for 10 years.
Okay.
The $200,000 bump.
Right.
so
Yeah.
so
So some-
underlying the EASID income, the single EASID income line is a schedule of all of the EASIDs that are out there. And those are the known quantities. We know who has an EASID. We know when that EASID ends.
Yeah.
Some have tails, so over time that'll drop off. But we did get a big infusion in 22, pay 23 from the Catalan activity. And so we know that assuming they continue to file, and this is true of everything, a big asterisk, but assuming that they file every year, which it's in their interest to do, they then will continue for the tenure of the.
So we are gonna have that income for a while. Yeah.
Okay.
So it may not be 500, but we're gonna be 5 or 4 for quite a while.
And what the unknown is someone who comes in,
A new one.
a new one that we just don't know is coming. They have to have that filed by the first part of the year to benefit in the subsequent year. So that's why we know what 23 is gonna look like. We don't know what 24 is gonna look like. So that's the uncertainty in forecasting.
Jane did some work on kind of the schedule of stuff coming when it rolled off and what our income looked.
Which Dee has picked up.
Okay.
And so we have that as an underlying file. So we have an idea. But again, it just doesn't take the new stuff into consideration, or it doesn't take the uncertainty of someone doesn't file for some reason.
And I think Dee, this 500,000 still could be a little bit light on income, right?
Yeah, it is. I actually hadn't changed it since our last conversation because I think you probably throw another 20 grand on there. It's probably.
Yeah, I think you were at 315 and we moved it to 5, which I don't have a problem with that. But.
One other thing. So I guess I do have two questions. So it sounds like everybody is kind of on board for if I put in a line for technology, like potential like unbudgeted technology program grants. And then the other idea I had was also there's not really a sustainability grant or program for the enterprise zone, and maybe if we try some grants or programs in that area for the enterprise zone.
I think that sounds fun. I was gonna actually ask about like a greening business program. I don't know, Alex, Jane and I met last year, or I guess sometime in the last year. I don't know if she talked to you about it at all, or if it was just an idea we had. It's like a way to leverage dollars that is a little bit different. So, well, I work for a company called Patronicity, and what we do is mostly work with funders to match grants by crowdfunding. And so Jane and I had talked about the idea, and like this would be like for later, but doing like a green business patronicity pilot program where we have the greening grant dollars, say like up to $20,000, and then a business can crowd fund to get that matched. So then instead of 20 from us, they would get basically 40 from us and the community to do things that like they're probably not going to do on their own. So it's just like an idea of adding more dollars to something, but yeah, it's just an idea, you know, it's something would ever want to consider.
Right.
I think these are all great ideas.
I do too.
They are both, I think I heard, did I hear three was the safety, security, ADA, another, so technology, safety, security, ADA is one.
So
That's two.
that's two
Yeah,
different.
right, two different. So ADA, safety, security, sustainability, environmental sustainability, which I think it's important to identify that it's environmental because there are other sustainability options. And then technology, so 4, right? So those are all great ideas, and part of this is in my opinion, we clearly have money to go ahead and put some placeholders in there, but there's a commitment of time. So like Dee and staff have to now administer those.
Right.
So it's super easy for us to say, sure, I'm making this easy. Sure, that sounds great. Let's put $20,000 into making things greener. But now you guys then have to, we're gonna come back and be like, hey, so how'd you do that? Where's the
program?
form? Where's the accountability?
Right.
How'd you decide that? So that's like a chunk of work. So I do want to state that because that's going to be not anything we all have to do.
Well,
concerned
you know,
about.
and I appreciate you saying that. One of the challenges that we've actually throughout the city is that there is actually a fair amount of money coming in, whether it's ARPA, Recover Forward before that, now with the economic development, local income tax. You know, it actually it takes a lot of work to get money out the door. So
Right.
we've mentioned a couple times this grant management platform. It is not a small thing for us because there's so many different grants going on. But if we can figure out a way, and if the UEA is comfortable with it, if we can figure out a way to try to funnel things through a platform like that, it makes life so much easier because right now it's very manual. So really we'll have to build the guidelines. What I like about some of the programs that he's talking about, and you know, we kind of have an interesting model on facade grants, which is, you know, the facade grant sort of is like the basic principle of that is we want to try to make improvements, but you have to have a little skin in the game, right?
Right.
And I kind of feel like that's a pretty good model for
Mhm.
maybe
I
all
li-
of these things.
I
right?
like that too.
And so I kind of feel like maybe, I mean, while I appreciate you raising this, I think that there are enough proxies and there are enough examples of what we've already done.
Mhm.
That we don't have to reinvent something.
Yeah.
We may change the rules a little bit, but if there's a way forward that we can try to standardize for all these programs, let's say it's a 50-50 match, or it's a 25-75 or whatever, so whatever the rule is,
Right.
and standardize it, it'll just make life a lot easier than us
I-
trying to balance all these.
I like
Yeah.
that too, because it's as opposed to somebody really wants to do it at that.
Yeah.
Right.
What I like about Kate's idea is that it's, you know, leverage, right? And-
Right.
and Leverage is
Right.
great. right?
Yeah. And
But-
then,
But devil's always in the details, even the matching or 50, that's super easy. What is an ADA grant? What does that look like? What is a greening? Like, do I go buy
There has to
garbage
be,
bags made out of recycled plastic, or is it like a significant thing?
Yeah.
And that is where you guys and Dee especially, there's gonna be a chunk of work defining what technology means.
and developing a program.
You know,
for it.
that's the big part. If
It
you're
is.
willing to do that, you've got lots of resources here and in the community. I think you could talk with the environmental commission, all those people and find out, you know, good ideas, but I'm in favor of it. I just want to be
Yeah.
state, it's gonna be a lot of work.
So is that something that you feel like you can bite off? Like what we're just talking about?
Well, it's always harder to test things, right? Because you're investing all your money, all your time into something that may or may not work. But I think that if we can be maybe selective about the sequencing of it in 2023 and sort of say, we're not going to do all 4 at once,
Right.
right? But maybe what we can do is we can pick a couple, start with those, pick a couple,
I agree with that.
and build them into the platform. And yeah,
I was gonna say, for the platform, it would be helpful if our next meeting, which is in like a month, if I need to get all of the VUA grants on the platform, would be helpful if I have a deadline of showing you how the platform works with our current grants, and that would be helpful to go over next.
Yeah.
I just want to put that out there, that we can, because I know it's kind of weird to talk about it without seeing what it is.
Right.
So, I'll just make a note that we will have it ready by the next meeting, so you can look at it, and then you can.
Is it a grant administration platform you're talking about, or you're just? or something
It's a
else?
software to a lot, it's like a platform, that a lot of things can be automated, so people meet the criteria, so because a lot of this, we have to do billing, and we have to like. Private community, I know this, and you have to like hassle them for the materials, this is a way that they can. Everything. Right away. So administer it, because that's probably important that we still have. Capability, but this is just a way to get all the information. They have automated messages when everything's accepted, it's just less work on our end. because-
So it's administration. So for me, my perspective is, I trust that you're gonna pick a good administration program. I really would like to see the actual grant documents, like what do we fund and how much do we fund, like all in one place. Here's the page for facade grants, here's the page for resident scholarships.
Yeah.
I don't know that that's all been presented as like a work product where it outlines the kinds of people that qualify, what qualifies, because I think that's gonna be great, and I appreciate that we could look through that. I'm much more interested in knowing, like, are we actually making things equitable for people in what qualifies and, you know, we, oh my gosh, the number of times we talk about facades, it's like 2 facades or one face.
Yes, yeah, that's was exactly
So,
what I was
yeah,
gonna say,
so-
because
Having all that, I would much rather see you guys spend time, I mean, I
Focus
know
on
you
that.
do, but, like, get that done,
Yeah.
especially if we're gonna open up 4 new types of grants, we've gotta just have something written, it can be a 1-pager, it doesn't have to be like
Yeah.
long, just a
each,
bullet point.
and each grant can identify the same, who qualifies, what dollar amount,
Yeah.
what do you match, what,
What's the limit?
Yeah.
Can they come back for 2?
Yeah.
What's the timeframe?
Right.
What's the, you know, what's the deadline on the same question you had, same thing, what's like,
Yeah.
just to have that we could refer to.
Yeah.
It's just spend money.
I would love to like have some time to think about all this stuff because like seeing this extra income is really cool and it's a very big deal, I think. And I think I don't want to like rush to be, and I know we're not, but like I would love to look at creative ways to really make a big difference with this going forward, where I mean, I don't know, I just like thinking about like helping businesses pay living wages, like things that are just like, I mean, we could do so much, I think, or it's just like exciting to me and I would like love time to like sit on myself and
think
Well,
about
maybe that's a homework assignment.
Yeah. And we did at one point talk about, I don't know if Jane ever got to do this, but Dee, you know, here's another thing. Was to look at some of the other BUEAs in the state of Indiana and see what they're funding. And I think we did pull up one, like Evansville's really.
We actually, Lisa's actually been doing that right now, especially with the ADA and the safety and security grants. So she has done a really great job of putting some information together. So we're working through that right now and just seeing what the other, you know, enterprise zones do and what has worked, what hasn't, how much they put into it and what their communities look like, you know.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know one of them had like beautification grants for neighborhoods or whatever. I mean, just thank you, because that, yeah, I agree. There's a lot of.
it's like, what can we do? I don't even know, like, what's the whole
Yeah.
realm of possibility
Right.
here?
And I was gonna add, before we get to parks, we can probably go on this, but, in addition to those other great ideas, so thank you, Dee and staff for presenting those, would be for us to consider, I would really be in favor of just upping some programs we already fund that are functioning well. That, you know, I mean, honestly, school grants, make it 50, resident scholarships, just make it 20. I mean, it works, and there's people who need money, and put it out there. We've got a lot of money we're sitting on, and just bump it up to 20 and, you know, drop in those lines for the new ones, but to really look at what we already do that's functioning and just throw some more money in there. And my last comment before we finish, and this is just for Dee, when we compare year over year, the 2022 and 2021 don't add up, like just for the income is not right, and the arts and culture. And so the bottom doesn't actually agree to our budget from last year. So it's.
I'm so sorry.
It's totally fine. I've done it a million times. It's just an Excel thing, you know, you add a row and then it doesn't pick it up in the total. So
Sure.
if you just want to look at those, I just thought I'd mention that because I was like, wait a minute, what happened to that? Or
I
So
will
it's just
keep
for those two, no big deal, but when we look year over year, that would be good to check that out.
So with an eye to having a meaningful and hopefully vote next month, trying to figure out how do we prepare, how do we come in with a document that has incorporated some of this? So should we be vague? Should we have, and maybe I'll throw this out, but should we say like, in the resident and in the business, if, 25,000 of grant making capacity, number one TBD, grant making capacity number two TBD, you just have 25 a piece, and that we try to figure out how to define those between the time that we take between now and December, but also, in the first part of next year. Or how should we handle the budget document to be able to have a vote for it?
Well, right now she's got unbudgeted grants of 20,000 and she's got unbudgeted grants she's got it in two places, 20,000.
Yeah.
So is that what you were looking at for two of the new programs possibly?
Well, essentially, yes. So under arts and culture, I basically just changed, it's just said miscellaneous, so I just put unbudgeted grants. And then as far as the business and entrepreneurship, it also was a line that was unbudgeted grants. Yes, I was looking to that for some of the proposed grants that I've just talked about, specifically the safety and security and ADA. As far as the technology and sustainability, I really haven't even tried to factor those in. Those are just ideas that kind of came up after I already sent this to you guys. So
Just do what number? I mean, honestly, we
Yeah,
could
yeah.
decide we're only willing to try $25,000 on an experimental grant. Or we could just put a line item that is one lump sum, because Dee and staff, when you guys go to work, you're gonna be like, well, actually it's 27 and you guys only have 20. And now we're gonna have to.
Yeah.
So it could be that it's an option. It could be that we just put one lump sum to cover for whatever number of grants we had and say, we're gonna put $100,000 on that line item, and technically they're not unbudgeted because it is a budgeted expense.
Right.
It's really an undefined grant.
I think that the unbudgeted came from, if I remember correctly, from the previous time when we were being approached by people for grants that we didn't see coming and we felt good
Right.
about.
Right.
Yeah.
So I actually think there's a difference between an unbudgeted grant and
undefined.
right, undefined grant.
Well, if it's on here, it's budgeted by
Yeah.
definition. So it's budgeted, it is a budgeted grant, we just didn't name it. I mean, like if we're gonna keep track.
Yeah,
So, I don't know, I'm okay with like an open-ended, I mean, gosh, what
Like
a
a
cool
line
place to be.
item for
Most people-
100,000.
Yeah, most people aren't in that situation where there's an extra 100,000 on top of everything else. Figure out, bring some recommendations to the board of how to spend it.
so a single line in 100,000.
It doesn't have to be 100.
To
I
capture
just-
all of this idea.
So
whatever
the
number.
ADA, safety, security, technology, environmental sustainability.
Yeah. So that'll be a way to deal with the unknown of how we want to go and approach this. Try to do some work fleshing that out between now and December, but if we can come back to you and say, and then maybe if we just kind of quickly fly through the other stuff, is there anything, I mean, I heard you say, Karan, popping a couple of known grants up, so the school grant.
I mean, I would be in favor of making the school 50. It's worked really well year over year over year. They know what they want. They do a super formal presentation, and it always gets unanimous approval.
Yeah, and we've already increased it from 35 to 45, so
Yeah.
50 is a.
50, and then resident scholarships, I mean,
Yeah, the biz sections too, we had a lot of people on those this year, so I would definitely say those two, just because we have, if you're even gonna do more like promotion of those, you would even have more. people. So I think that would be.
So maybe 15 on that one.
15.
And then from an arts perspective, is there anything that you feel like Holly should be considering?
Wanted to give me an
Yeah.
extra 10K. One thing I've been playing around with the idea of is like knowing that we have an emerging artist grant from the BAC is in addition to artists just knowing that they can apply for this grant. What we're seeing those applications is they need just this to put together a good application. So one thing we've been thinking about doing is doing grants, so these folks can go out and take classes to just learn how to level their game up as they're presenting themselves professionally. So I would love to see an extra 10K in those, either the city art program or the Zone Art grants to help support those next year.
So make the city art program is more about this, about funding something that the city is doing, right? So maybe the zone art grant line is a better place for what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
I think that makes sense.
And when we talk about this sort of like undefined grant, is that gonna pick up the 20 and the 20 on here and just go into a separate category?
I think
that's-
those would go away.
Yeah, those would go away, that 20 and 20. And then you could make a new header. There's business and entrepreneurship, arts and culture. You could have like an undefined section and just put one line and it's undefined grants and it's 100,000 and it sits there and you could use it for something new. It could also be used for, you know, an increase in something else or.
That I would be in favor of pushing it even higher than that we talked about, because we're also sitting on, right, over 2 million. In assets, so to me, I'm in favor of getting it out there and spending it for programs that work or that we're trying. Just from a public process, if I were a member of the public looking at budget and seeing undefined grants, it would seem kind of like a slush fund. So if there's any way we can even put in some kind of, it seems some definition of what we're thinking of.
Yeah.
We can refer to some of the pending ideas. I mean,
Right.
as long as we don't have.
Yeah.
It may be that some just are not appropriate as we sort of work
Sure.
our way through it, but that makes sense.
You could even footnote it and say pending ideas included.
Yeah, something like that.
So you are saying more, are you,
Yes.
so would you say like 150 instead of 100? One of
See,
the,
I think this is just and I'm not going against what you said, but we have to administer all these programs. And I think if we bite off too much,
well,
we've
yeah,
got a problem. So.
So I guess I feel like we have several times over this past year increased
Right.
some of the funding to existing grants, and I feel like we're sort of oriented that way. And so if we start it, we might not spend that much, but to have it budgeted, I think would be a good thing.
Yeah, this right now, if we increase to those new levels is 5 more for grants, 5, 10, 15 plus 10, 25,000 out of that 233.
that's on the existing grant.
Yeah.
Versus 25.
And then if we were to do 150, we'd be looking at 175 increase if we did that 150. So instead of 233, it's gonna be 55. If we went up to 150, and if we don't go up to 150, it'll be.
Well, the 150 is also netting down.
Oh,
40,
those 220s are
Right.
coming out too, yeah. So it's still
So you can
quite a
absorb
bit.
150. leaving
I don't
it.
know, I mean. It's actually 3 million.
3 million.
Yeah.
So
There we have
That's-
that.
I get uncomfortable when there's that much money sitting here.
And a
And
not-for-profit.
I think we get to a point where we want to have a chunk to do like some cool program that you find that is a significant thing that we didn't know about. And it's like, wow, we've got a couple million to do that. But 3 million to me feels like it's getting a little not, a little high.
It did allow us though to do the CDF by friendly, so
Yeah,
we gave $1
yes.
million.
Yes,
So, I mean, and we wouldn't have been able to do that when we didn't have.
right. But, and I agree with that. I just think 3 million is kind of getting up there.
Yeah.
That's a
Well,
little
that may be a big
beyond.
place. So maybe what we say is, I mean, if everybody's okay with it, move that to 150, which is really sort of a net 110, right? Because of
Right, because
40.
the
So-
other 20s come out.
Yeah, so the
Right.
150 line of sort of grants to be determined, parentheses, ADA, climate related, et cetera,
That's
right?
good. Grants keep coming.
And then we up the individual line items we just talked about by that cumulative 25,000 and present that as an updated cleanup, obviously, the formula, present that as an updated budget for the next meeting. And if we get consensus on it, or if we can kind of tweak it and vote it in, I'd be more comfortable having that locked in before the start of the year, so we don't go into a new year without a budget locked in.
Right.
But you know, we could always give ourselves another month.
So that's.
D, it might be helpful if you could send the revised budget out maybe before the meeting so people can have some time to look at it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%.
I know you've talked about maybe thinking of some new ideas. So,
Yeah,
and I think
yeah.
that's fantastic. And if you come up with anything else from other places too, you know, if I get a minute, I'll look around too. I know I did at some point. It seems a long time ago, but yeah, thanks for your work on that.
Yeah.
I'm very excited about this.
Thank you.
Okay. So no vote necessary or
No.
sought today on this. Unfinished business. Nothing lingering other than the NCCSD foundation work, which we will provide an update for when we get it. Next general discussion.
Anything for the good of the order? All right. Next meeting, December 14th.